Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week. And as always, I'd like to thank the following people that sent me a lot of this information, and that would be Barrett Peterson, Chris Fallon, Jacqueline Wolf, and Scott Arbrough. Thank you so much. And if you have a tip for me, please send it my way, and I'm happy to give you a shout out here and on my nationally syndicated radio show as well when I replay a lot of these. So with that, let's get started. This was a crazy week, and let's start with scheduling platform FlexBooker. They apologized this past week for a data breach that involved the sensitive information on 3.7 million of their users. Their customer database was breached after their Amazon Web Services servers were compromised on December 23rd. FlexBooker said, and I quote, their system data storage was also accessed and downloaded as part of this attack. So if you use FlexBooker for all your booking needs, heads up to you, basically. Moving on, let's talk about the city of Grass Valley, California. They had a quote-unquote data security incident. Now, this happened on December 1st of 2021, and they determined that the files contained some information relating to individuals associated with Grass Valley, and this is a laundry list. I'm not going to go through this, but essentially, if you have anything to do with Grass Valley, assume that anything you have given them in terms of your information or information they store on you is there. Grass Valley employees is one category, individual vendors of Grass Valley is another, individuals just in general that have interacted with the Grass Valley Police Department as well, and also individuals whose information would have been provided to Grass Valley Community Development Department have all been hit. So we're talking loan applications and all that for that one. So obviously that's a huge thing. Everything in Grass Valley appears to really be hit, so heads up to you if you live in Grass Valley, California, or work there. Moving on. I want to give you an update from last week on the Rhode Island Public Transport Authority, or Transit Authority, that's RIPTA. That data breach basically is now linked to a file that was wrongly stored on an employee's hard drive. At some point in August of 2020, over a year and a half ago, roughly, a payroll clerk at RIPTA, quote, downloaded a file to pay monthly claims. According to their analysis, that file was, quote, left on the employee's hard drive, which is not normal, and that hard drive was hacked. That is from their official statement. That is what happens. We have to make sure we've got good asset management, good data security for our mobile devices, and obviously good cyber hygiene when handling sensitive information. There you go. I also want to give you another update on Morgan Stanley. They had a large data breach a while back because this past Friday, Morgan Stanley agreed to pay $60 million as a preliminary settlement of a class action lawsuit brought against it for allegedly failing to secure customers' personal data before retiring old information technology. I went ahead and looked back past my notes because I talked about this a couple years ago, and sure enough, Morgan Stanley was there, and they were throwing out and recycling old servers that they didn't wipe ahead of time. That's lazy IT. Now, the lawsuit was basically filed on behalf of roughly 15 million of their customers that basically, and this was pursuant to two actual incidents that occurred in both 2016 and 2019 of essentially a similar nature. So there you go. If you're a Morgan Stanley customer between 2016 and 2019 or earlier than 2016, heads up to you. You may be entitled to compensation. Moving on. Let's talk about the Franklin Park Conservatory in the state of Ohio. They experienced a data breach this past summer and is in the process of notifying about 5,000 of their patrons that they think are affected by this. According to a statement from the organization, their computer systems basically had a interruption, if you will, and July 21st of this past year, and the organization didn't have access until their servers until August 12th. They were down for a few weeks, and then when they returned to fully functioning system with the help of experts, they also basically had an understanding that this was somewhere between July 21st and August 12th. And so if you visited the park between those two dates, those date ranges, heads up to you, you are probably in this data breach. There we go. Moving on. Let's talk about online pharmacy company Ravku and the Fertility Centers of Illinois, or FCI, excuse me, I cannot speak today. Now, the HIPAA Journal said that 79,943 current and former patients were sent breach notification letters informing them that their passport numbers, social security numbers, financial account information, payment card information, treatment information, treating physicians, medical billings, claims information, prescription information, medication information, Medicare, Medicaid identification numbers, etc. were all leaked. Now, FCI, the Fertility Clinics of Illinois, said it, quote, became aware of suspicious activity on its internal systems on February 1st and determined that patient information was involved by August. The company did not respond for requests for comment on why it took them so long to essentially inform the victims. But here we are. There you go. So if you are using in some way, shape, or form RAVCU or the fertility centers of Illinois or fertility clinics of Illinois, heads up to you. Moving on, let's talk about US Cellular, the fourth largest wireless carrier in the United States. They just disclosed that a data breach of their company's billing system essentially happened in December of this past year. The mobile carrier said the data breach, or rather they sent data breach notification letters to 405 impacted individuals, that the attackers also ported some of their information, including a lot of the customer information that you would give a mobile carrier. So heads up to you. If you're a US Cellular member, or you're a member, I guess a customer, a subscriber, if you will, if you get a letter, heads up, I'd be on the lookout. Moving on, let's talk about DatPiff. Apparently, this is a popular mixtape hosting service. I'd never heard of this. Essentially, the cracked passwords for almost 7.5 million DatPiff members are being sold online, and users can check to see if they're part of this breach, as it has now been ingested into the Have I Been Pwned notification service and website. It's unclear when the data breach occurred, but the DatPiff database was first sold privately and then publicly on hacking forums in July of 2020. So odds are it's before that time. So if you've been a long-time subscriber or member of DatPiff, the mixtape hosting service, heads up to you. There you go. Go check Have I Been Pwned. Moving on. Let's talk about something I actually talked about live on the air on the Tech Time radio show last night. That was this past Saturday night. Not my show, but I'm a regular guest on there about cybersecurity. Let's talk about the Bernalillo County government in the state of New Mexico. They got hit with the ransomware attack, and county government buildings and public offices were closed this past Wednesday across the cities of Albuquerque, Los Ranchos, and Tijeras, after a ransomware attack basically hit the IT network of the county government. The attack primarily cut off county employees from accessing local government databases, which obviously has made working with the public essentially impossible. All public offices of any sort were closed down early this past Wednesday as a result, and obviously they're still unscrewing themselves for that, but heads up to you if you live in Albuquerque, Los Ranchos, Tijeras, or any one of those close cities to that county. You are probably going to be impacted by your basically not having government function if you need to interact with them. Moving on. Let's talk about Google Docs, because Google Docs is not breached, but Google Docs is actually being used to phish you, and here's what's going on. Now, this is basically, this is coming from the commenting feature of Google Docs, and here's essentially how this is working. Essentially, a threat actor creates a Google Docs file. The threat actor adds a malicious link inside the file's comments section. The threat actor then uses the Shift2 feature to mention Gmail users, and then all those users that are mentioned with that feature will receive an email containing a link to a Google's Doc file, but also a preview of the comments section, which includes a link to the malicious site. So in other words, if you're looking at your Gmail account and you are basically mentioned in a Google Doc and you're like, what the heck is this? Don't click on it. It could be actually an infected file or a link to an infected site. That's obviously a huge thing. Obviously, Google is aware. They are looking at shutting that down. But heads up, in the meantime, if you get a link from Google Docs, there you go. Moving on. Let's talk about the UK's Defence Academy. A cyber attack on the UK's Defence Academy essentially is apparently caused significant damage. Now, here's what's going on. We don't know much at this time because this is brand new, but retired Air Marshal Edward Stringer, who left the armed forces this past August in the UK, said the attack was discovered in March of 2021, and it essentially forced their defense academy to rebuild their entire network. What we know right now is that China, Russia, Iran, or North Korea are currently suspects, but the UK military has not named the culprit just yet, or who they believe the culprit is. And so obviously I'll keep an eye on that and let you know. Obviously a huge issue. Moving on, let's talk about Sotheby's Realty, and this is actually kind of a big one. Threat actors leveraged a cloud video hosting service to carry out a supply chain attack on more than 100 real estate websites operated by Sotheby's Realty that involved injecting malicious skimmers to steal sensitive personal information. Now, the skimmer attacks is also known as form jacking, relates to the type of cyber attack wherein threat actors insert malicious JavaScript code into the website, most often basically at the checkout or payment page on like things like shopping and e-commerce portals, to harvest valuable information like credit card details, all those kinds of things. And so essentially, if you have anything to do with Sotheby Realty right now, you definitely want to make sure that you are checking those sites through something like VirusTotal or Security Site Check before you actually go to that site if you really need to. If you don't need to go there, or you can figure out another way to talk to Sotheby's, you might want to do that until they give us the all clear. Heads up on that. And finally, and this is actually a rather long finally, because this past couple of weeks has been massive when it comes to supply chain hits. We have seen some very large supply chain hits happen in the last couple of weeks, and I want to give you an update on one and give you two new ones that I'm probably going to be reporting on for months here as we go on. Now, the first one is Kronos. I mentioned this last week. That is the HR platform that is used by like a zillion people, or organizations, I should say, across the globe, but a ton of cities and municipalities here in the United States, not to mention the corporations, have started to declare. Due to the transparency laws and compliances of the U.S. law, a lot of these cities and municipalities started to declare faster than a lot of corporations. And so in this past week, these are essentially the cities that we know are running Kronos or have started to declare. And that would be New York City, Honolulu, Hawaii, Corpus Christi, Texas, Springfield, Massachusetts, Dallas, Texas, Cleveland, Ohio, Chicago, Illinois, Denver, Colorado, Prince George's County, Maryland, and many, many more. I'm going to try to keep up with this one, but as I've done with previous massive breaches like Blackbaud, for example, I will continue to update, not obviously on the attack itself, but on those that have to declare. Supply chain breaches are a huge problem. And the next major one we have to talk about that literally just dropped in the last couple of days is Finalsite. Now, this is a cloud-based web hosting provider that specializes in school and educational websites, and essentially they got hit with a ransomware attack. Obviously, this isn't Kronos, this is a whole new thing, but they are going to be the next Kronos here. And I quote from their statement, on Tuesday, January 4, our team identified the presence of ransomware on certain systems in our environment. Now, here's the thing. 8,000 schools have been impacted by this. This one just happened, and so nobody's really reporting. And the only example we have so far is St. John's Prep. And that's all I know. This is going to keep me busy updating all y'all here on this basically video and podcast. So that is a huge one. Odds are, if you've got kids, or not odds are, but if you have kids, odds are, or possibly the school or school district that your child goes to or children go to may be impacted by this. And the last one I want to talk about, and this one is going to be bad. This one is going to be bad. We're talking about Ciox Health. This is Ciox Health. They are a clinical data technology company, and they just declared a data breach. And this is going to impact at least 32 healthcare organizations, some of which are massive. Now, this is why basically supply chain breaches like Kronos and Finalsite I talked about are so bad. We have a huge problem here where everybody is using the centralized service gets hit, and then all of their customers have a serious problem and have to declare. That is the state of the internet today. Now, here's what happened here. An unauthorized third party accessed one of Ciox's employees' email accounts between June 24th and July 2nd of last year. A notice on the company's website basically spells all of this out. The individual may have downloaded emails or attachments from this account. So, as you are looking at this, that is not necessarily on its face a massive thing. They didn't copy out the entire database from Ciox. They didn't get deep into the system. They were able to take over, essentially, and compromise a single mailbox, and that's all it took. Now, on September 24th, Ciox determined that the emails and attachments contained patient information relating to billing inquiries and other customer service requests. Then, in November and December, SciOx began notifying their basically healthcare provider customers, meaning they are contacting the hospital systems that they deal with of this breach, and then they have to essentially go down, these hospital systems have to go down and start notifying patients. Now, the exposed information may have included patients' names, birth dates, dates of service, provider names. In a very few cases, we're talking social security numbers, driver's license, treatment information, and health insurance information. But essentially, this affects some massive hospitals and hospital systems. And I'm going to go through that list real quick. And if you go to one of these, you're definitely going to want to check in, or they might be checking in with you by virtue of the letter. But here we go. And with that, we're going to start with Advent Health in Orlando. The next one up is Alabama Orthopedic Specialist, Baptist Memorial Healthcare, Butler Health Systems, Cameron Memorial Community Hospital, Centra Health Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, Coastal Family Health Center, Copley Hospital, DeSoto Memorial Hospital Health System, Evergreen Health, HOAG Health System, Hospital Sisters Health System, Huntsville Hospital Health System, Indiana University Health, McLeod Health System, MD Partners, Niagara Falls Memorial Medical Center Health System, Northern Light Mercy Hospital, which I actually was part of Black Bod. I actually remember them. I believe they were in Maine, if I recall. Northwestern Medicine here in Chicago. Ohio State University Health System. Ortho Connecticut. Prisma Health Greenville Health System, Prisma Health Palmetto Health, Sarasota County Public Hospital District, Sarasota Memorial Healthcare System, Trinity Health Holy Cross Hospital, Trinity Health Mount Carmel Health System, Trinity Health St. Alphonsus Health System, Trinity Health St. Francis Medical Center, Trinity Health St. Joseph Mercy Health System, Union Hospital Healthcare System, and Women's Health Specialist. And that is going to get worse. But if you are looking between Kronos, Final Sight, and now this massive breach that is coming from SciOx Health, we are talking about potentially tens of thousands of businesses out there in the last week or two that now have to declare a data breach. I could make this a full-time job just updating you on these three as we slowly see these hospital systems, these HR platform customers, these schools start to declare data breaches. This is what we are talking about. And so part of what I want to discuss real quick is actually supply chain assurance. You probably work for an organization or a business, unless you're retired or you're completely independent. As we are essentially interacting as a company, as an organization with our supply chain, maybe we're outsourcing HR or we're outsourcing, other services that require some kind of technology, it really behooves all of us to have good supply chain risk management. Every organization should be querying every organization that they are going to start paying money to do something for them to essentially get attestation of adequate security controls. Maybe they've got certain security compliances that they can prove to you. Maybe it is the C-level or an executive at that supplier that can essentially write a letter saying, yes, we attest to this. That is for your liability. So many organizations simply pick a platform because it looks good. Meaning this has all the features that we want, it's slick, it's back and forth, without understanding if they've actually baked in security controls. Maybe this is a startup that rushed that product to market, and while it looks great, they cut a lot of corners. Or maybe they don't have the infrastructure or cybersecurity teams integrated into the development side of this and the infrastructure design side of this, and here we are. We see these things constantly just in my day job, and that is a huge problem. So make sure that you don't end up as one of these tens of thousands of organizations. And even, I will say this, even when they're giving you these attestations, it's not always 100%. This is why I'm glad that we are seeing pushes, at least here in the United States, for essentially software grading, software certifications, those kinds of things that essentially a lot of organizations can get on, start certifying that they have good controls, and there you go. We also have other standards that organizations can meet to show that they have at least tried or have adequate security controls, like SOC 2 compliance, ISO 27001, now the new CMMC, which is still being shaked out. These are things that I think should be table stakes for all organizations, from small to large, but should also scale. I'm not expecting a small business to jump through a million hoops, but you should still have to jump through some hoops to ensure that if I'm using you as a vendor, that you have at least the table stakes controls and data security done with some policies and procedures, and the massive corporations better have all those hoops jumped through, or else why use them? So there you go. I'm going to leave it at that. It was another crazy week, and hopefully you weren't affected. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.